Our next speaker is an international speaker, has featured on the BBC, and he's spent his life helping charities to raise money. Please help us welcome Paul the Saint Martin.
Good evening. Thank you, Bernie. Where's he gone? Oh, he's over there. For a fabulous introduction, I appreciate it. And it's my honour to be here at the Old Mountbatten. It's a wonderful place. It does superb contributions to people's humanity, and I'm delighted to be sponsoring the evening. So, I may not be politically correct. Is that okay?
That could change. You never were.
As you're sitting there in your chair, you're probably thinking, the saint. I am a saint. I am registered as a saint. The fascination is how and why. So, is it okay with you if I tell you a little story to embrace what a saint really is?
Yes, please.
I was born in 1950. That's hard to believe, isn't it? Those of you who can do maths will have worked out, actually, last week, I was 67.
Looking good.
Thank you. You don't look so bad yourself, Mia. I was born 1950. I was raised in a very, and this is true, I'm not taking a mickey, in a very poor environment. We lived in a little cottage in the middle of a lord's estate. I'm not talking a council estate. My rich friends lived on council estates. We lived in this little cottage, no electricity, no mains water. It was amazingly tough. I had special permission to get to school late because I couldn't get there on time because I had to link all the buses together after I'd walked 2 miles through the woods. Yeah. I had my first pair of shoes when I was 12 years old, and I've still got them. The point is, we were poor. And I think Mum and Dad probably christened me St. John, or St. John, to make me appreciate that I could develop into something really wealthy. Because have you ever heard the name St. John? I only ever heard of it once, and it was a politician, Norman St. John Stevens. And that's the only time I've ever heard the name. So I was christened Paul St. John Martin. And I didn't really know anything about that until about a year ago. I was at a function as a speaker, and I was introduced to another speaker prior to us, if you like, doing our thing. And she was a little posh, you know. And I was introduced to her as Paul St. John Martin. Oh, St. John, she said. Isn't that what they used to call illegitimate children? So you've got about 30 minutes to work out whether I really am a...
Well, we know that.
Said it only yesterday.
Yeah. I said I'm going to speak for 30 minutes, but actually you've only got about... We determined where we were this morning. I was with some guys doing some training. We determined how long does it take for you to make your mind up about somebody? 3 seconds. Wow. So I look forward to seeing what happens over the next 30 minutes with regard to that. I want to talk about something really, really serious. The lack of humour that there is abounding today. Is that fair? Yeah. So I might be a little bit touching on some subjects which you've never heard of, because obviously some of you have never laughed, I can see that. I'd like to give you an example. You do judge people, don't you? Or are you not judgmental? I'm very judgmental. I judge people very quickly. 3 seconds, we said, didn't we? And the way to do this is what I call the desert island tea time test. If you were stuck on a desert island and you were coping okay, and then there was a storm and somebody was washed up on the beach, you've got to decide one of 3 things. Would I trust them? Would I tolerate them? Or in fact, would I terminate them? Seriously, those are the 3 things. If a salesman comes to see you, you've got 3 seconds to think, well, am I going to do business with this guy? Do I tolerate him, or am I going to tell him to buzz off? Is that fair? So I'm going to go into a little bit of depth about how you actually judge people. But I'll start, if I may, by just explaining a story. This is very strange because a guy called Bernie was actually trapped on a desert island some years ago. You may have heard this story. And he was the only survivor, apart from a young female pig, which is called a gilt, and a big Rottweiler.
She's got a big dog.
And Bernie was coping, but because, you know, he's a man and he's a bit virile, after a period of time he started to look at the rear of this pig. I did tell you it's not politically correct. He started to look at the rear of this pig and he was thinking, better not. And a week went by and he thought, maybe I will. And another week went by and he thought, yeah, fine. Nobody will know. Well, so he went to try and have some pleasure with the pig. But the dog viciously defended the pig. He couldn't get near it. And this went on for about a month. Every time he thought, he couldn't get near this bloody pig. And then there was a storm, a massive storm. And believe it or not, a young woman got washed up on the floor, on the beach. And she was in a bad way, coughing and spluttering. And Bernie managed to resuscitate her with the appropriate whatever it is you do. And she said, "Oh, you've saved my life. I'm so grateful. Is there anything I can do for you?" And Bernie said, "What, anything?" "Yeah, anything." So Bernie said, "Can you look after the dog for 10 minutes?" Sorry, Bernie. You remember I said you've got 3 seconds to work out whether you trust somebody, tolerate them, or terminate them. What are the clues? What clues do you have when you observe somebody in business or in matrimonial, whatever? How do you determine if you can trust somebody or not? I would put it to you that eye contact is quite important. If somebody avoids eye contact with you, it ain't going to go well, is it? And that does happen. Does it ever happen to you? What about a smile? If somebody smiles, do you think you could get on with them?
I don't know. Yeah.
And what about body language? Is body language important? You do a lot of this subconsciously. You don't know it's actually happening. I love body language. There's a wonderful author called Alan Pease who's done a book on body language. He's one of our heroes, isn't he, Bernie? Absolutely fabulous. And I'll tell you a true story about, one particular bit of body language, and it's quite key that you understand this one and observe it. Have you ever seen anybody do that? Yeah, or, okay? Whenever you see somebody do that, they're lying. I'm serious. It's called the Pinocchio itch, and it's true. So whenever you see somebody, if they're in conversation and Lindsay says, "I can turn 100 grand into 200 grand in a year," it may not actually be technically correct. Is that what he told you? How's it going, Barry? 300. Right, but it's true. Honestly, I always remember that. And the best example of it was, do you remember an American president called Hillary Clinton's husband? What was he called? Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton.
The cigar specialist.
I'm not sure what he used the cigars for, but anyway, he was interviewed. Do you remember there was some malicious gossip about him having a sexual affair with a young lady? Monica, whatever her name was, and he was interviewed, and he said, "I did not have a sexual relationship with that woman," and he was doing this. It was all on the film. You can tell if people are lying. I'm telling you. Okay, so you're on a desert island. Somebody's floated to the surface. You've got to decide: do I trust them? Do I terminate them? Whatever. And this is where it gets quite interesting. There's 3 types of animal within this process. If somebody is a black dog, would you want to spend time? I'm not talking about the black dog that chased the pig. I'm talking about people that are angry and are not comfortable in their skin. Would you know somebody like that? Would you trust somebody that was a black dog? Do you know anybody that's an ostrich? They stick their heads in the sand, metaphorically speaking. And they're the people that go, yeah, whatever. Do you know anybody? You try and challenge them to do something, yeah, whatever. They're ostriches. Or do you know anybody that's a bumblebee? Where's my little bumblebee? My gorgeous granddaughter bought this for me. You can't really see it. What does a bumblebee do? Don't all answer at once, please. I can't. A bumblebee buzzes. It creates a buzz. Do you know any people that create a buzz?
No.
Why does that not surprise me? Yes. Did you know it's technically, physically impossible for a bumblebee to fly? Can't be done. And yet the bumblebee doesn't know that it can't do that, so it gets on with it. Do you know any human beings that get on with things even when the times are tough? They flap their wings, make a buzz, get on with life. Now, it's quite important that you understand what a bumblebee does. It belongs to, if you like, a group of bees, doesn't it? Because they collect all the pollen and take it back to the hive and create honey. Does that remind you of how you do business? Do you go out, collect the pollen, turn it into money, turn it into honey? That's the way it's done. Now, a bumblebee I'm not sure if terminology cross-fertilises is correct, but if you didn't have bees that went from plant to plant, there would be no plants, would there? Thank you. So it's really important that if we want to succeed in life, we cross-pollinate, and that doesn't mean... It means we meet socially with other people and so forth, but we don't take it any further. But it's really important we do that. And I've recently observed, I saw a photograph of a bee that was covered in pollen, on their legs, all the rest of it. Now, when I was a kid, I was told by my mum, never trust anybody with a beard. But I now know why men have beards, because they can collect more pollen. And I didn't know that. So, I'll move on a little bit if I may. Have any of you ever heard of a satsuma?
Yes.
Are you looking at my notes? People don't grasp this one. What holds a satsuma together? Who said pith? You're not supposed to do it quite as quickly as that, Anne. But I know you, and I know that you've taken the pith for years. What holds a satsuma together, and you're quite right, it is the pith. And where people go wrong in business and in domestic life is they focus on each of the segments. But you can't have a rounded and complete cycle of things happening or a balanced life if you're focusing on one segment. What you should be focusing on, in my humble opinion, or my bumble opinion, is you should be focusing on what holds all the segments together. I've been told never to talk about politics. If you look at what's going on in the world today, it's an interesting place, and all the different parties are arguing about different points, but they're forgetting what sticks us all together. So what is it that sticks us all together? And you're quite right, Anne, it is pith. Now, what I need you to do for the rest of your life is buzz like a bee and take the pith. So what does pith stand for? If you want to get a best out of life, what does pith mean? Any ideas?
Building bridges, I guess.
Building bridges. How do you spell building bridges with a P? Personal. What's more important, people or profit?
People.
Absolutely. People every time. What's the leadership? What's the definition of leadership? Personal power to win the hearts and minds of the people for a common purpose. It's all about people. It's not about the money, honey. It's about the honey. There's a difference.
Ask the bee.
Pardon?
Ask the bee.
Ask the bee. Okay. No, you're right. You're right. But it's about people, it's about persistency. People give up too quickly these days. But back to the ostriches, aren't we? You know, people give up too easily. But if you've got persistence, and I am being serious now, you can achieve anything you put your mind to. You really can, as long as you remember to flap your wings. It isn't going to come to you, is it? Life isn't like that. You have to go and find it. You have to fly. You have to buzz. You have to mix. Is that fair? What does integrity stand for? Oh, sorry. Integrity stands for I. So we're into PI, so we're into integrity. Do any of you understand and grasp what integrity is? No, I don't. I used to work in financial services. No, integrity is really, really important. Again, I've been married for 44 years. I don't sure what that's got to do with integrity. Actually, it's got everything to do with it. We trust each other. It's a wonderful experience, and so forth. But integrity is really important. And again, if we look at what's going on in the world today, it's a very interesting process, is it not? What does T stand for? I got that one right. Trust. Remember, desert island, 3 seconds. Can I trust this person? Honestly, it's that tough. Okay, what does H stand for? Humanity. Who said that? Don't put your hand up. Was it you, Pete? Well, you're wrong. H. It's the most important one of all. If you haven't got this, you're doomed. You're doomed. It's humour. You've got to have a sense. If you're on the bloody island with me, you've got to have a sense of humour. Is that all right? No. No. Humour, there's a little adage, isn't there? Humour heals. Have you heard that one? Yeah. And it does. People who laugh last longer. Sorry, Colin. Now, here's the thing. If I could show you how to make the most fantastic mind-altering substance known to mankind free and legally, would you be interested? No, you miserable bugger. Did you know that laughter creates a chemical inside your brain? It's called endorphin. And it's as powerful as morphine. And I've tried them both. And I can say it is, honestly, if you laugh regularly, you'll be fitter than people that don't laugh. I can't understand why you're so thin, sir. It's just a... It's free. If you can learn how to create endorphins and be a bee and create the buzz that makes other people create endorphins, wouldn't we all be happier? Yeah? And all you've got to do is take the pith. If you could choose, some people I was told by a wonderful leader many years ago, Paul, it's about happiness, health, and wealth. What's the order that you should do it in? Any idea? A lot of people say health first, and it's quite interesting because if you choose happiness first, you create the endorphins, you're likely to be more healthy. So it's an interesting argument, seriously. Happiness, health, and wealth. I'm delighted that those of you who are still awake didn't say wealth, because actually you can never have enough money. Who in this room, watch this bit carefully, Lindsay, this might be useful for you. How many of you have got more wealth than you know what to do with? Has Richard Branson got more money than he knows what to do with? Interesting one, isn't it? And there are various others, aren't there? Bernie Ecclestone. And who's that bloke who used to own BHS stores? Has he got enough? Philip Green. Has he got enough money? You can never, ever have enough wealth. So why would you focus on that at the expense of your health and at the expense of your happiness? Wouldn't it be better to look at happiness first and develop it from there? Because I promise you, the happier you are, the more healthy you'll be, the more wealthy you'll be. Is that a decent deal? And it costs nothing. I've got a story for you. Does it involve pith? It does actually involve pith. I'm not bragging, but I've had a fantastic life. I've been adventures all over the world. I've done some amazing things, including being married to my wife for 44 years. And it's taught me, I've had to link with people and leaders and so forth and so on some of the things that I've done. So, could I tell you a little story? Would that be okay? No.
What do you expect to say?
You're starting to get heckled now, Paul.
Yeah, I know her. I'll give you a short version. In September 1995, I was in Southampton. What was the name of that shopping precinct that's now a block of flats? Can't remember what it was called, but I was walking through with my wife, and a newspaper fluttered across the floor. Now, I'm always keen to get something that's for nothing, so I picked up this newspaper. This is absolutely true story. I picked up the newspaper, and on it, there was an article about crew required for a round-the-world yacht race. Do you remember it? It's called the British Steel Challenge in 1992, and in 1996 it was called the BT Global Challenge. And I thought, wow, I'd love to do that. So I phoned up the appropriate phone number that was in this newspaper, and they said, yeah, that's fine, Mr. Martin, you're 10,000th on the list. There were 10,000 applicants to become crew members on what was called the BT Global Challenge. Oh, okay then. So I could have given up there, couldn't I? But I didn't give up. I kept pursuing it, and I became aware, after time, kept ringing them up and all the rest of it, I became aware of the fact that one of the yachts was going to have disabled people on it. So I applied. You might think that's a bit cheeky, but if I tell you, I had a lot of injuries. I had snapped my Achilles twice. I've got 4 operations on my shoulders. I've got a knee that's 60% smashed. So I wanted to see if I could get on that particular boat. And to do that, you had to have an interview with a chap called Che Blythe. Do you remember a chap called Che Blythe? So I had to go to London for an interview with Che. And I got there, and he opened the door, and I went in for the interview. And as I went in for the interview, remember this was for disabled people, Che's first words to me were, "You don't look very bloody disabled to me, boy," as I walked in. And I explained that ankle, shoulders, therefore, because I'm not fully able, I must by definition be disabled. He looked at me, and I'd driven 200 miles for this interview. He looked at me, "You'll do for me, sonny." And he ticked the box, and that was the end of the interview. Doesn't take long to make an appointment, does it? And the long story short, after a period of time and a lot of perseverance and getting fit and so forth and so on, I actually got a place on the BT Global Challenge. So the point being is, you look at something 10,000 to 1, and if you're persistent and you keep hammering away and you're not frightened to create a buzz, you can achieve awesome results. So believe and achieve, and that's about persistence, isn't it? And I wasn't chosen because I was a sailor or a bastard. I was chosen because he thought that I was a rounded individual who could be trusted, had integrity, and indeed a sense of humour. And trust me, when you're sailing around the world with 15 other people, you need a sense of humour. But we won't go there. We haven't got time. But that was a fantastic experience. And if you ever want me to speak about something like that, I can tell you lots of stories about. They say you should keep what happens what do they say? What happens on the ship stays on the ship? No, it bloody doesn't, mate. I've got some lovely stories. Bernie mentioned charities. I do stuff for charities, and I was very lucky to get involved in a charity. What were you guys? Please, I'm interested to know. What were you guys doing on the 31st of December, 1999? It was a new millennium. Come on, what were you doing? Okay, I can't hear. Right, hang on. So I've started something now. So we'll sort it out later. I saw an opportunity to go to Everest Base Camp for New Year's Eve. Everest Base Camp, New Year's Eve. And again, when I looked into it more deeply, it wasn't going to work because I was the oldest candidate. I was 50 at that time. And again, I had my injuries, and you had to be pretty fit. And I'd never climbed above Snowdon, actually, which is 3,000 feet, and base camp's just under 20,000 feet. Altitude is a very strange thing. It kills people. It really does. Anyway, again, by persevering and so forth, over a period of time and building up my fitness and so forth, I actually did go to Everest Base Camp, New Year's Eve, 1999. There were only 8 of us, plus the chaps. But again, it was a fantastic experience. And again, if you don't have a go at things that are challenging, you never actually know what you're capable of. And when you die, what do you want to be remembered for? Being an ostrich? Being a grumpy old black dog? Or being a bumblebee, somebody that actually made a difference? That trip to Everest was for charity. We raised money for children in Nepal. And again, I got a lot of stories in there that are quite interesting and worthy of discussion at some point. So, as you sit in your chair right now, what ambitions do you have that are unfulfilled? I appreciate all the grumpy old card players from Brighton. They'd passed their sell-by date. But you youngsters...
I know what your impression is. We just want to be to win a game.
I mean, you found us. We didn't find you.
Yeah. Fair enough. Actually, that's a very good point. I am delighted to be part of a card-playing syndicate, not for real money, I have to say. But happiness is not just about laughter. It's about team. You'll be aware of that. If you're a loner, you'll never find happiness. But a team, it's a well-used phrase. What does team stand for? Together, everybody achieves more. And it's true. And I'm delighted. I go and play cards with the lads. I use the term lads loosely. But it's great, and we have a lot of banter and a lot of laughter, and it's just a wonderful way. And I can see in here, you guys you're all bumblebees, well, 1 or 2 exceptions, but you've got the capacity to do great things, and I know a lot of you do. And I mean, look at the old Mountbatten. Look what a wonderful job they do. It's fantastic, isn't it? Oh. Okay. So the only limits on your capacity are the way you think and how you manage your mind. That's all it's about. And the best thing to do to manage your mind is to fill it with the correct chemical. And the correct chemical is endorphin. And the only way to absorb endorphin is to laugh. Is that fair? Well, bloody well laugh then. So, thank you. Take the pith. Enjoy the trip. You'll live longer. You'll gain the love and recognition that you deserve. I admire you all for being here tonight. I'm grateful that you've all supported this wonderful event. It's been fantastic for me to be part of it. You'll have the personal power to win the hearts and minds of the people. Do you remember I said leadership is about winning the hearts and minds? What happens? Anybody ever heard the phrase "caught in 2 minds"? Yeah, and that's how divide and conquer works. If they can get you to be cautious about your mind, they'll stop you doing things that you want to do. People are out there to steal your dreams. Do not allow people to steal your dreams. The answer to everything is in your heart. Don't listen to your head. Just fill it with the correct chemical, would be my advice. You'll be more, you'll do more, you'll have more. So I challenge you. Take the pith, flap your wings, mix with people. Find the strength in everybody rather than the weaknesses. Don't let somebody else destroy your ability. You're amazing, each and every one of you. Well, one or two exceptions, but you're amazing. You can do anything you want to do if you put your mind to it. Have you heard the word believe? Well, it's actually live, B-E-E, live. If you're a bee, you'll live the life you want to live. Behave, what my mum used to tell me all those years ago. Be, have. If you're a bee, you can have what you want. Is that fair? Believe. Be a bumblebee. Right, I'll leave you with a joke. I was a policeman. That's not a joke. I was actually a police reservist. They were called specials in the old day. And we had the power to arrest and all the rest of it in the old days. Now they're just social security officers, aren't they? But I was on duty one day, and this chap came down the road towards us. I was on with another PC, and he was totally nude. He didn't have no clothes on at all. This was in Wilton, near Salisbury, rural place. So we sort of stopped the chap and said, "Excuse me, you've got no clothes on. What on earth's going on?" He said, "A bit complicated," he said. So we took off our hats and covered him up and walked him down the station, made him a cup of tea and said, "Look, this is not on. Explain to us what's going on." Well, he said, and Jeff, it's interesting you mentioned your combine harvester, because before combine harvesters was threshing machines. Do you remember the old threshing machines? And this farmer, he was called Jeff, that's very strange, isn't it? So this farmer, Jeff, was no clothes on, and we got him down the neck. And he said, and we said, "Come on, explain to us what you're doing." And he said, "I got this threshing machine at home. It threshes the corn." And so he said, "It's harvest time and I needed some help. So I haven't got any members of staff, so I went down the local, what do you call it, where you go, job centre." And he said, I asked down there if there's anybody that could help me for the day on the threshing machine. And the only person available was a young lady called Tamara.
No, it's not true.
Do you want me to hold your dog?
So he said, we agreed Tamara was capable and physically fit and all the rest of it. So she came back to the farm and I explained what we had to do, and you put the corn in one end and the thing thrashes it, and the straw comes out one side and the grain comes out the other. And we did this, and she was working extremely well with me. It was no problem at all. And then after about a quarter of an hour, she came over to me and she said, "Look, it's awfully warm, Farmer Jeff. Do you mind if I take off my jacket?" No, of course, if you're warm. She said, "Actually, you're starting to sweat a bit. Why don't you take your jacket off?" Which I did. And this went on for about 10 minutes, and then she came back after a period of time, and she said, "You know what, it's getting really, really warm. Do you mind if I take off my blouse and my trousers? And why don't you do the same? Because I can see you're getting warm, see?" So I did the same. And then after about a quarter of an hour, she took all the clothes off and laid in the straw. And she said to me, "There you are, Farmer Jeff. Why don't you go to town?" And here I am. It's been my absolute pleasure to speak with you this evening. Thank you for staying awake. I really do appreciate it. My name is The Saint. You've had 30 minutes to work out if I'm a bastard or not. And I'd just like to thank you all for coming to this event. And from now on, it's take your money out and help us with all the charity work. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Paul. The Saints.